All right, so this is day number 4, and I'm actually on my lunch break. I think I mentioned to you guys that I don't have a particular time that I have set for when this is going to happen, but I do know that I do want it to happen. So actually, I think I'm going to go back around this way and start out in a different spot. But yeah, so I'm on my lunch break, and I am taking this time to walk, and I'm walking around the hospital, walking around where my office is. So you'll get to see a little bit of where I am. But my point is that everything doesn't always follow the same schedule, but consistency doesn't require that. And today we're going to spend some time talking about a topic that we've mentioned before, but we're going to spend a little bit more time delving deeper into it. So if we're going to be successful, if we're going to set ourselves up for success in the metabolic space in terms of our health, consistency, of course, is one of those keys. The other thing is to be able to have goals and know when we reach those goals, and have goals that are ambitious enough to pull us to higher heights and to better ourselves, but goals that are also attainable, reachable, and so forth. And you probably have an idea of where I'm going already with this. We're going to talk a little bit about SMART goals. And to be precise, we're going to talk about specifics, right? How to make specific goals. What do we want to do in that space? Why is having a goal acronym that we've been using, the SMART acronym for goals, why is it important to have those? Well, number one, often we are having challenges in terms of our success, not because we are not desirous, not because we don't have drive, not because we don't have the ambition, but we're not able to succeed because we don't have a plan. Actually, let me walk out this way, all right? Because we don't have a plan. And when we have plans for the things that we want to do, then we're able to keep within that plan. We're able to be accountable. We're able to judge and to assess whether we are where we need to be with respect to the plan. If there's no plan, then there's really not a lot of that. And you've heard me say before, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And so we don't want to fail. And so we want to make sure that we're doing all those things in our space that keeps us in that direction. Okay? All right. So SMART, and SMART is just a framework, if you will, for how to put together goals that allow us the maximum potential for success. Notice what I said, the maximum potential for success. As we've mentioned before, there are going to be times when we're going to not succeed. But if we are diligent, if we're consistent, if we create goals that are SMART, then our potential for having success is much improved. Okay? All right, so SMART. What does SMART stands for? SMART stands for specific. So we want goals to be specific. We want them to be measurable. We want them to be achievable or attainable. We want them to be relevant or related to the things that we want to do. And we want them to be time-bound or time-based. Okay? And you'll see those words. The reason I keep using two words is that you'll see them listed in different ways. So, and just to run through them really quickly, if we have goals that are not specific, if we have goals that are very vague, then we don't know if we've reached them. We don't have a way to judge if what we're doing right now is taking us in that direction. We don't have a way to judge whether we're taking too much time to get to that particular goal. We don't even have a way of judging whether that goal is something that's doable. Okay? And so having this process in place gives us all of those things that we just mentioned, and it sets us up for being able to move in the right direction. Now I've got some guys who are so hold on a second, we're gonna walk by these guys here in a minute. Hopefully you can still hear me. I'm walking a little faster to get by them. All right. And they're off here to my right. Okay, so let's talk about some practical goals or some goals within health. Right? We've been using some different examples, but let's go ahead and let's narrow down and let's talk specifically as it relates to our health. And here in this space, there are about 3 or 4 things that I want us to concentrate on. And you may come up with a different goal, a different thing that you want, and you can use the framework to actually plug in there. Okay, so for example, we've talked about saving money. We've talked about starting a business. We've talked about building a house. We've talked about relationships. So there are all these different goals that you may have, but in this episode, we're going to talk specifically about some health goals. And the ones that I want us to talk about, one is our blood sugar management, blood sugar control, and our A1C, okay? And we'll outline the others here in just a minute. So the question that we want to ask when we talk about A1C and blood sugar is, what is a reasonable A1C? What is the goal generally for an A1C? And for A1Cs, there are specifics that we have that are in keeping with what everybody agrees is where we should be, okay? So as you're researching your particular goal, particular thing that you are dealing with, the question is not just, do I think this is reasonable? The question also is, what is the reasonable thing for my health? Because, I may think it's reasonable to have an A1C of 14, but that's not in keeping with where we all agree A1Cs should be, okay? So it's not just, are you comfortable with A1C, but what do you think, where should the A1C be? And so when we talk about A1Cs, what we're talking about are A1Cs that are, our goal A1C, let me just say that, is usually a 6.5. Depending on which organization you talk to, the American Diabetic Association or American Association of Clinical Endocrinologists, one says below 7, the other says below 6 or 6.5 or below. And I usually tell people shoot for 6.5, and if they do that, then that will satisfy both organizations. Okay, so 6.5 is the A1C that we're shooting for. And so the question then becomes, if I am using A1C as a goal, where should my A1C be? Should I say that I want my A1C to be 6.5 next week, next month? Okay, where am I going to go? And one of the points that I'm going to make later on is that we want to start small. We want to start slow. We want to start with little changes. Okay, so as we talk about A1C, we also have to talk about blood sugar. So what is a reasonable blood sugar? Because blood sugars are the things that are represented by A1C. The A1C is a 90-day representation of blood sugar. So where does my blood sugar have to be for me to have an A1C of 6.5? And I usually tell people somewhere between 100 and 120. If you keep your A1C in that space, then, or blood sugar in that space, then your A1C will be where you expect it to be. And so that's really what we want to do, okay? And so now let's go ahead and let's begin walking through the process. So my A1C is going to be something. I'm going to pick a number, and that number is going to be what I'm going to be shooting for. As I'm shooting for that, I'll have to make changes with my blood sugar to correspond with what the A1C is and what the A1C is that I'm looking for, okay? So let's start with a simple, I think, one. Or maybe not even a simple one, but one that makes the math easy. We're going to start with an A1C of 8. Okay? So an A1C of 8, if I'm going from 8 to 6.5, that means that I have, 1.5 A1C points to go in order to get to where I need to be. And each A1C point is 25 milligrams per deciliter of blood sugar. So as I'm looking at my A1C, to correspond that to blood sugar, that means I need to have my blood sugar go down by 37 points in order to get an A1C of 6.5. And it has to go down by that in 90 days, because when you're looking at A1Cs and getting labs, you'll be able to get labs every 90 days, so 3 months. Now, you can get them sooner, and sorry, the payment is a little rocky here. You can get them sooner, and I have done them sooner, and you can see improvement. Because remember, even though it's a 90-day average, it doesn't say that it has to be 90 days. It just says that you're going to get an average of the last 90 days. Okay, so you can see changes even before 90 days. But typically, your insurances, your physicians, your insurance won't allow any more. Physicians will order them every 90 days, and so that's typically what you'll get. So practically speaking, the first time that you can see an A1C is in 90 days. So 90 days. So the question then becomes, what specific A1C do I want to have in 90 days? Or what's it reasonable to have? And I would say that having an A1C drop within 2 points, right? So 8, if we're 8 going down to 6, or 8.5 going down to 6.5, I would think that's reasonable. In fact, I often tell my patients that I want to see it go down even more than that, or quicker than that. But let's use a 2-point drop, okay, in this instance. So we're going to go, and we're going to change our parameters. Let's say we're going to start at 8.5, and we're going to go from an 8.5 down to 6.5, because that's our goal. And so notice what we've said. We've been very specific about what we want. There's no vagaries. There's no interpretation. There's no, oh, I thought it was this, oh, I thought it was that. It is a number, an A1C of 6.5 from wherever I am right now. Okay? So it's very specific. Let's talk about weight. Right? And with this specificity, in terms of getting that A1C down, we've taken into consideration what we think is reasonable, the amount of time that potentially it could take. We've talked about the physiology. We've talked about what the A1C represents, how often you can get it. So all those things came into our thought process as we are trying to be specific about our A1C. Now notice, you have to be able to evaluate. You can't just wake up one day and decide, okay, this is what I'm going to do. You've got to have some data. You've got to have some information about whatever it is you're changing, so that you can know whether what you're doing, what you're planning to do, is reasonable to be able to do. Let's do another one. which is a big one a lot of people struggle with and talk about, and that is weight. Okay, so weight changes. So I've had people come in, or you may know friends who say, hey, I want to lose 30 pounds in the next week, or I have a dress that I've got to get into for a wedding that's coming up here in 2 weeks, or I'm going to a reunion. I'm going to high school reunion, family reunion, and the guy says, I used to be able to fit into this suit 20 years ago, so I've got to lose X number of pounds. And the question is it doable? Is it reasonable? What is to be expected? And in order to answer those questions, we've got to ask some questions as well. What is a reasonable weight loss? And what are the things that affect weight? Are two simple ones that come off right off the top of my head. And when we talk about weight loss, a reasonable amount of weight loss that we've talked about, and this is what is agreed upon by a lot of the experts, is that having between a half a pound to a pound of weight loss per week is considered reasonable and considered sustainable. Reasonable and sustainable. If you've not heard my story, go back and you'll see in I forgot what year that was, but we set out on a task to lose the upper part of that, so 1 pound per week, so 52 pounds in 52 weeks or a year, and so we were able to achieve that. And the reason it's important to know those numbers is I've had people come to me and they've been doing an amazing job. And remember, in those first several days, maybe a couple of weeks, it is possible to lose quite a bit of weight as we're losing water and so forth. So I've had people come to me in a week and a half and they've lost, 4 pounds. And they're upset because they expected and they wanted to lose more. But if you lose 4 pounds, 4.5 pounds in 1 week, guess what? You are above, you're beyond, you're ahead of the game. But if you don't understand that, then that becomes a frustration because you're looking to lose more weight more quickly. And then, you're like, well, I'm not losing it, so there must be something wrong with me. So why do we say a half a pound to a pound a week? And I suppose let me add a phrase, a word in front of weight loss. This is two words, healthy and sustainable weight loss. Healthy and sustainable weight loss. Now, it is certainly possible to lose weight faster. It is certainly possible to have our weight go down much quicker, but is it sustainable and is it a healthy weight loss? Okay, so those are 2 questions that we want to ask. And if it's not, then it may be doable, but is it what we want if we're talking about being healthy? Okay, so here we're talking in this space about being healthy. So weight loss. So a half a pound to a pound per week. That means then that theoretically, if someone says, I want to lose 15 pounds in the next month, that's doable. If someone says, I want to lose 30 pounds, sorry, I said 15 pounds in the next month. So we're saying half a pound to a pound a week. If someone says, I want to lose 30 pounds in the next month, that is not in keeping with what we've just researched, what we agree with, what everybody is saying is doable and everybody's saying is healthy. Okay? In 30 days, 4 weeks, or if it's a 5-week month, then we're talking about 2.5 pounds between 2 pounds and 5 pounds, half a pound or 1 pound per week. And so that is a healthy, sustainable weight goal. Now, if you lose more than that, because you've been doing some other things that are helping to sustain that, then that's amazing as well. But if you're not, then that's okay. Okay? All right. So wait. So as we're moving into the weight space, what do we think is reasonable, and what are you going to put in? So I usually tell people that we should shoot for a 90-day program at least. Whatever program you're going to work on, break it into 90-day chunks. So if we're saying 90 days, right, which is 12 weeks, then we should be able to lose between 6 and 12 pounds in 90 days. Does that make sense? So notice we're very specific in what we want. There's no vagueness. It's not cloudy. There's no ambiguity. Just like with the A1C, 6.5 is what we're shooting for. And here we're shooting for 1.5 pounds to 1 pound per week. The other thing to notice as we talk about the weight part, or the weight goal, is notice I did not give a number. I didn't give a final number.
Time 22 minutes 14 seconds. Total distance 1.0 miles. Average pace 22 minutes 14 seconds per mile. Split pace 22 minutes 14 seconds per mile.
All right, that was just my app giving out the readouts of what we've done so far. Okay? Yeah, so I was saying that notice that I did not give an absolute number for my goal weight. What I did do is I gave a pound per week of what my weight should be, or how much I'm planning to lose. Now, you can be specific even further and give a number. So I want to, let's say you're 200 pounds, and I'm picking that because the math is easy. Well, let's do something else. Let's do 180. Okay? 180 in 90 days. We're talking about losing 12 pounds. And so we're down now to 168 pounds. Right? So that now gives me a absolute number, and it gives me what's going to be the other thing we're talking about here in a minute. It's going to gives me those mileposts, or those mile markers. Let me say it that way. Gives me those mile markers to look at. Okay, so let's do this way. Boom. This is just where I'm walking. So once again, specific. Another one when it comes to health is setting and there are people who really want to be well. So they don't have diabetes. They're maybe a little overweight, but they want to work on some other things. Like they want to work on toning their body. And in toning the body, they're talking about their fat, percent body fat. They're talking about how much, they're talking about their hydration and protein and so forth. And so when we are talking about body fat and talking about toning, in order for a man, to have a six-pack, then his body fat has to be down like 15%. For women, it's a little higher, it's in the 20s, 21, 22. But for a guy, you've got to get body fat down to 16%. And once again, this may fall for some of you into the weight loss component, but what's a reasonable drop in body fat? Now, we can do it a lot quicker in a lot of cases. We can do it in an unhealthy way, but is that what we want? And the answer is no. So as we're talking about body fat, so 15 to 16% for men and 21 to 22% for women. That will give you body fat, the body fat where you want. And so this correlates often with BMI. In order for a man to drop 1 BMI point, he's got to lose about 6 pounds. In order for a woman to lose 1 BMI point, she's got to lose about 5 pounds. And so if we're looking at body fat and we're saying, hey, I need to go down, and the body fat a lot will correlate with BMI. So I've got to lose 6 pounds, for example, right? To get to a body fat of, I don't know, let's pick a number. Maybe I'm 19. And I need to get down to body fat of 15. So we got 4 to go. In order for me to lose 3 BMI points, I've got to lose 15 pounds. If that's the case, and we've said that it's a half a pound to a pound per week, that means it's 7.5 to 15 weeks that will take. Notice what I've done is I'm extrapolating. I've done the research. I've looked at the things that I want to do, and I'm setting up now specific goals. So I'm not just getting up and saying, oh, this is what I want to do, because I've got data to back up that this is something that's doable, right? Because that's going to come in a minute when we go further into the SMART acronym. Okay, so specific. So 6.5 A1C. So 2 months. So 2 A1C point drops in 3 months. We want to have half a pound to a pound weight loss per week, and 7.5 to 15 weeks for us to drop a BMI point, drop our body percentage, so that we can go down those BMI points that it takes us to get toned. Okay? So once again, specific, not just random numbers that we pull out of the air, but we're saying, hey, what are the reasonable? And for some of us, and you might be out there and say, well, I don't want to be reasonable. I want to be, and I want to have some lofty expectations. And I love that. I'm all for that. But I also want to put this in perspective for you so that you understand when you are making progress, that it's not that you are not making progress, but you're making progress. You let this truck pass by. But you're making progress and becoming healthy, and you can celebrate where you are. Often, we talked about perfectionism, often people can't celebrate because everything is not going according to what they plan. And they've got to be resilient and flexible and all the things we talked about. Okay, so SMART, specific. Notice that those things that we talked about, they're also measurable. Right? Because I get labs and it tells me my A1C 6.5 or not 6.5. So I know immediately if I've achieved what I want. I get on the scale and I could tell immediately whether I am doing or I'm moving in that direction. I look at my body composition apps and they tell me immediately where my body compositions are. Okay? So those are specific. They're measurable. They are achievable because I've done the research and I have determined based on data, based on reality, that this is something that can be done. Is it relevant? Is it related to my overall goal? And if my overall goal is health, if my overall goal is to improve my blood sugars, to reverse my diabetes, if my overall goal is to lose weight, if my overall goal is to improve my body composition and get cut and all the stuff we talk about, so yeah. And then by virtue of what we decided, right, we've already made it time bound. So 2 A1C points in 90 days. Half a pound to a pound a week. A body composition or body fat that is 15% in going down by 2 BMI points in 90 days or 15 weeks. Sorry, I said 90 days, but 15 weeks. Notice we have built that into what we're doing. Specific, measurable, achievable or attainable, relevant, and it is time bound. Now, we'll come back and we'll spend more time talking about some of the other components, but I wanted to spend this episode talking about the specific part, because I think often that's where a lot of people will fall down as they're creating these SMART goals. The specific part gets vague, or they can't move on to the others in terms of, is it relevant, is it achievable, is it time bound, because they haven't done the research, they haven't done the conversation or asked the question about what is a reasonable change that I should see in this particular area or this particular parameter, this particular thing that I'm doing in terms of my diabetes. And I made a loop right there. Okay. So consistency as we continue this 100-day trek. Whatever the thing is that you're working on in terms of setting yourself up for success, I want you to plug it in to this discussion that we've just had. Right? So today I talk specifically about some health goals as we are in this space, but whatever your goals are, you plug them in right there. The other thing I want to make sure that you're doing is that you are spending time going through the exercises that go along with each of these discussions. Right? They really do set you up for success. So don't short circuit yourself. Don't lose out on the benefit of these of this process by not doing the exercises. Right? Sometimes people look at the exercises and say, "Oh, I already know that. It's already in my head." But I encourage you to take the time, sit down. Don't be in a space that's very busy or noisy or where you're distracted. Go through those exercises, and then you can use those worksheets, those exercise results, and you can begin creating your manual. That's right, creating your manual, your 100 days of consistent effort to be better and to improve your health. Hey, this is Dr. Dwain Woode. Thank you for joining me. We'll see you in these streets as we continue our 100 days. Have a good one. Bye-bye.